All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are unpacking a very weird day in fintech. We're talking specifically about June 25th, 2026. This was just one of those days where money moved in bizarre, totally unexpected directions. The lines between traditional banks, tech disruptors, and completely unrelated industries just suddenly blurred. Honestly, if you want to understand where the modern financial stack is actually heading, this single day tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Because the modern financial ecosystem, yeah, it's just not a one-size-fits-all model anymore.
There's this great quote that perfectly sums up the day. 3 companies walked into Thursday. One moved $243 billion. One became a travel blogger. One invested in software your dad uses to balance his checkbook. I absolutely love this because it perfectly sets up the mystery of our 3 protagonists. We've got 3 massive companies taking completely different approaches to capturing the financial ecosystem, and their moves are literally going to impact how we all interact with our money going forward.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to navigate a weird day in fintech, look at Wise's profitable cross-border flex, see how Visa is becoming your new travel blogger, watch the old school strike back, and finally, look at how we're building the new financial stack. So, let's kick things off with this weird day in fintech, June 25th, 2026.
And that takes us to Wise's profitable cross-border flex, basically doing the impossible.
So, you know how moving money internationally has traditionally been just a painful, incredibly expensive process? Well, to understand how the disruptor Wise is actually fixing that, we first need a quick refresher on what a Form 6K is. It's simply how foreign companies that are listed on U.S. exchanges report material news to the SEC between their big annual filings. Wise, which had just debuted on the Nasdaq in May of 2026, dropped this filing and it instantly grabbed massive attention across the entire financial sector because, frankly, the numbers were absolutely stacked.
Just wrap your head around the sheer scale of this number. In fiscal year 2026, Wise moved $243.5 billion in cross-border volume. That is a staggering amount of money, representing a 31% jump in volume. They aren't just some niche app for digital nomads anymore, right? They are moving $250 billion of the global economy.
But here is where it gets truly wild. Consider this stark difference in fees. Wise's average take rate is just 52 basis points. What that means in plain English is they're charging less than a single dollar for every $200 moved. Meanwhile, your traditional bank is out there comfortably charging a flat $45 fee just for a standard wire transfer. And usually, when fintechs race to the bottom on fees, they bleed cash, they lose money hand over fist. But Wise is somehow doing the exact opposite.
Now, what's really interesting here is the relationship between these growth metrics. Revenue is up 19%, but cross-border volume is up 31%. Card spend is up even higher at 37%. So Wise doing the thing that is genuinely incredibly hard in fintech. They are growing their volume significantly faster than their revenue, all while their margins are actually going up, not down.
When you synthesize all this, it becomes so clear why this was such an earnings flex for them. With $2.5 billion in net revenue, their income before tax margin hit 26%, which, by the way, was actually above their own guided range. Customer holdings jumped 40% to $39 billion, and they announced a $500 million share buyback. So Wise definitively proved that cross-border fintech can scale, and it can do it highly profitably. That 6K absolutely delivered.
Moving right along to Visa, your new travel blogger. Let's look at the behemoth's pivot.
Visa is the absolute behemoth of the industry, but they seemingly decided that just processing payments wasn't enough for them anymore. Which forces us to ask a rather amusing question. Why does a $631 billion company want to recommend croissants to you? Like, why on earth is the world's largest payment network acting like a lifestyle influencer? Because, believe it or not, that is exactly what they did when they launched their new Visa Destinations platform.
So Visa Destinations is this mobile travel platform that's currently live in 10 global hubs. We're talking places like Paris, London, Dubai, Rome, New York. It offers curated local experiences, city guides, exclusive cardholder perks, and what they're calling passion-led travel. They've even partnered with massive brands like Santander, Star Alliance, Global Blue, and Trip.com to pull this whole thing off.
To put this into perspective, let's look at Visa's financial cushion. Visa already processes $43 billion in annual revenue with an almost unbelievable 97.8% gross margin. They are practically printing money. So watching them launch a lifestyle travel app is essentially the financial equivalent of your accountant handing you a Yelp review. Out of nowhere, right? It feels entirely unprompted.
But underneath that unprompted pivot is actually some genius logic. Travel is projected to grow 10% annually. Plus, 4 in 10 Americans are planning trips specifically around festivals or sporting events. And crucially, cross-border spend is exactly where Visa makes its absolutely highest profits. So if Visa can embed themselves into your travel journey before you even make a purchase, they create this massive, defensible pre-purchase moat. They are essentially trying to become the TripAdvisor for the ultra-premium set.
So the key takeaway for Visa here is that this pivot from being invisible payment rails to an active travel companion is actually a brilliant business move. When you have $43 billion in revenue and massive travel growth tailwinds behind you, trying to capture lifestyle travel planning to lock in those lucrative cross-border fees, it's far less ridiculous than it sounds.
Let's move to and see how this builds. The old school strikes back with the legacy bundle. So we've seen the disruptor, we've seen the behemoth, but how are the legacy wealth managers responding to all this? Take a look at this timeline for Edward Jones. You know, the 100-year-old firm with 19,000 advisors, the one your uncle probably swears by? Quicken, the personal finance software, was founded all the way back in 1983. Fast forward to January 2026, and Edward Jones finally secures an ILC bank charter after a grueling 6-year regulatory slog. That finally gives them actual banking infrastructure. Then, perfectly timed for June 2026, Edward Jones makes a massive investment in Quicken. Now, why Quicken, of all things? Because Quicken instantly brings over 2 million dedicated subscribers directly into the Edward Jones ecosystem. By plugging this legacy software into their newly chartered banking infrastructure, an Edward Jones financial advisor can suddenly see a client's full, comprehensive money picture, not just what's sitting in their brokerage account. If you compare this legacy move to a modern neobank strategy, it is incredibly revealing. Both of them are executing the exact same playbook. Wrap the client in so many useful financial tools that switching to a competitor genuinely hurts. The only real difference here is that Edward Jones is executing this highly aggressive retention strategy while wearing a cardigan. Seriously, the unfashionable wrapper shouldn't distract us from their real aggressive ambition here.
The core takeaway for Edward Jones is that they are quietly but super effectively building a complete, full-service financial stack designed specifically for Main Street clients. They don't need the flashy neobank branding. They're proving that a slow, steady, and methodical approach to capturing the full customer relationship sometimes really does win the race.
Finally, let's talk about building the new financial stack and tying it all together. We have a low-fee cross-border disruptor, a massive payment processor turning into a travel guide, and a 100-year-old wealth manager buying 1980s software. So the crucial point is the incredible diversity of these strategies. Wise aims for cross-border dominance by scaling extremely low fees profitably. Visa wants a pre-purchase travel moat via a lifestyle platform, and Edward Jones wants the full financial picture via legacy software bundling. The modern fintech stack isn't just about one specific product anymore. It's about owning the customer relationship from end to end, regardless of where you start from.
Which leads us with one final, very important question. Who is ultimately going to win your wallet? Will it be the disruptor, the behemoth, or the legacy wealth manager? As a quick reminder, this explainer is for informational purposes only, but it should definitely keep you curious about where your money goes next and who is quietly building the tools to capture it. Keep watching the stack, folks.